likely most of the structures in Myra Canyon will be lost today.
Over the course of 4 days, September 3rd to 7th, 2003, 2/3 of the historic trestles in the area known as Myra Canyon were destroyed or damaged by the Okanagan Mountain Park fire. Despite air tanker drops of fire retardant directly on some of the structures, 12 of the wooden ones were totally consumed, and the ties were burned off, 2 trestles made of steel. In some cases, the fires were fueled by piles of old creosoted ties and beams discarded into the canyon below by railway maintenance crews over the past 75 years. Attempts were made to remove these fuel piles as the flames advanced, but in the end, the winds in the canyon and the heat of the fire created a blast furnace that left only ash behind, and not much of that. In his book of the same name, Barry Sanford referred to the Kettle Valley Railway as McCullough's Wonder. And no stretch of track contributed more to that description than the 5-mile section that's come to be known as Myra Canyon. Villainously heavy construction, said Andrew McCullough, on building in Myra Canyon. Thousands of laborers roughed in the rail bed. The sweat of hundreds of loggers produced the timber. The output of every sawmill in the district provided the millions of board feet of dimension lumber for the structures. 200 carpenters joined the throng to assemble the trestles. As Sanford put it, even the veteran railway builders with the CPR were amazed at the immensity of the undertaking. In this episode of Pioneers in Places, Penticton Museum curator Randy Manuel and veteran railway film taker Mo Morrison look at what it took to build what the wildfire destroyed. Welcome to Pioneers in Places. Mike Roberts with the curator of the Penticton Museum, Randy Manuel, and today we're going to take a workman's approach look at the construction of the Kettle Valley Railway, because it took how many men to build this from 1911 to 1915?
At any particular point, there was probably over 6,000 people working on the line in various locations along the way. At the midway end, in the middle at Penticton, where they could work both east and west, and down at the Hope End, where the line was eventually hoping to be able to join up with the CPR's main line.
Now, when we take a look at the work crews who were here, there is a theory that the work was done by armies of Chinese laborers. What's your response to that?
There was none. No Chinese were involved at all in the construction of the Kettle Valley Railway, because it was at that time in the province's political life in which the Chinese Exclusion Act was in full force, and no company could employ Chinese or Oriental labor under provincial charters.
Look at this piece of work right here. This is a surveyor's telescope theodolite. Is this anybody's specials?
This is part of the survey equipment that was used on the building of the Kettle Valley line back into 1911, 12, and 13, together with other sorts of equipment such as the compass there, which would give you just a basic idea of where the center line is going to be, and then you're going to really line yourself up with this particular instrument. But before these guys are even in that particular spot, you've got to send somebody else, especially with a little hand compass, to be able to chart where they're going to go up the West Kettle and find that summit, that pass in the Okanagan Highlands, to be able to get over into the Okanagan Valley.
Who was the surveyor of choice here, who took his compass and shot the lines and followed what he presumed would be the logical railway route?
McCullough would have been part of it, and he would have had a number of people in his employ to be able to go and find the various routes. And certainly some of them had gone as far south as over Dales Pass and would have come out down near Vasso Lake and up the east side of Dog Lake into Penticton. But what would happen is these fellows would survey that line, and using the chain, and we've got an old one over here that's all rusted together now, won't open up anymore.
Yeah.
But this is all part of Andrew McCullough's original personal equipment to be able to survey the line. And they would survey a line Then out would come the brushers, and the brushers would clear 50 feet on either side of this survey line. Then the next guys would come along, and these people would be with axe and saw cutting down the large trees and cutting them up and pulling them off the center line. Then along would come the other fellows that would be blowing stumps. Then with black powder, they would go to each stump, blow them out of the way, and then the fellows would actually get into the business of clearing the rights of way. Now, all of this sort of stuff, the logistics of getting all of the equipment up there was spectacular in itself. So we've got the lake boats like the York and the Culloden, and these were the boats that you didn't want to be a passenger on, Mike, because these carried nitroglycerin, black powder, and dynamite, and they would run up on the shores at 9 Mile Point, which later becomes Naramata, and places like the Mission down here in South Kelowna, and all of that stuff would then be unloaded into these wagons, which,
Look.
now can you imagine?
This is the flat deck truck of the time.
Sure.
Look at all of these crews. How many? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 crews of Teamsters hauling nitroglycerin on these up to the railway?
Black powder, and this is why we find that there's a lot of injuries along the way. I mean, we certainly have those tales of, for instance, the fellows are blasting and the dynamite is frozen, and they would heat it up in frying pans, and occasionally they'd go off prematurely.
That's got to wreck your breakfast right
Oh,
there.
not only that, it really scrambled the bacon and eggs. It just was not one of the things that you wanted to do.
And again, you're talking 6,000 men working up here, so this is huge. Now, there is a guy with a theodolite in the middle of a tunnel. That's how tunnels and cuts were built.
What's happening here is they're doing a coyote hole.
Which are the coyote holes?
These 3 small holes on top, and they are actually starting at the roof of the tunnel and working their way down. And they'll be shoveling the soil out of this tunnel cut into the little ore cart down here, which is just on a small gauge railway. And as this gets all shoveled in here, a horse or a mule would then pull it away, and that soil and waste would be dumped over the side.
So in this way, you could have a crew in each one of those tunnels digging and blasting and, I mean, hopefully telling the crews next door when they were going to do any of this.
And occasionally, things went off premature. Mr. Eckel, who was one of the men who would have operated these surveying equipment, talks about walking through one of the tunnels one day up in Myra Canyon when he hears a blast go off prematurely. And he said, we rushed forward to be able to take a look at the scene of devastation as one of the blasts had gone off, and several of the men were severely injured and at least 2 were killed. One of at least 120 known deaths in the construction of this line.
120 deaths over a period of 1911 to 1915.
That's right.
On this rail line.
Just on the construction alone. The logistics were incredible for, feeding them, getting all the equipment there.
Yeah.
And they are also working all by hand. This is one of the last of the big railways in North America that are built entirely by the sweat of men and horses. Here are these fellows who are out there working at $2.50 a day. They are hand digging or hand bombing in these cases the soil or the rocks. After they've gone through a major cut like this, the rock has to be broken up by sledge, and then a gin pole, which is 3 poles coming out with a block and tackle on it, would wrap a chain around that rock, put it onto the little flat car, which would then be hauled to the end and thrown over the side. There's no mechanization whatsoever in the building of this railway.
When you take a look at where these men had to work, there's no workers' compensation board. I mean, in fact, probably if you went up with ropes, you were considered chicken, or it was considered too slow, or there's no sense for that. These guys are sneaking up the side hills and prying rocks off and down onto their partners in the bottom.
Oh, it is. And you figure these guys, in some cases, have to be lowered over the edge of canyons and precipices. There were some places where they would actually build a platform out, and then they would be dropped down into the canyon to be able to start to do what they call double jacking. And double jacking meant they're drilling in these rocky gulches, and 3 guys to a drill. So 1 man's hanging onto the drill, and the other 2 each have a 10-pound sledge. And as they're hitting it, the man who's hanging on to the bar is twisting it. And they'd be there all day long to be able to make a 5-foot drill.
If the guy missed the drill and hit the guy holding it, it would break his arm.
Well, he'd have a very sore thumb if nothing else.
This is the work of man and beast getting this done. I have to take a break, okay? We're going to take a break because after the bulwark is done, after you've scraped it clean, after you've gotten it down to some sort of level, then you were able to actually bring in the most complicated mathematics to build the rest.
Yes.
We're going to do that when we come back from this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with Randy Manuel talking about the construction of the Kettle Valley Railway. And of course, everybody's focus lately has been on the trestles because of the fire and their losses. But we talk about 18 trestles on the Myra. There were way more trestles than that at the beginning, but some of them sort of disappeared. Why?
Over the years, or certainly during the early types of railway construction, you have to think of the type of technologies that they have in those days, that it was a lot easier to be able to build small trestles over small gulches along the way. And by the 1920s, some of these earlier trestles would have been filled in with gravel and earth fill, and they would have been able to continue on to be able to build the line, certainly a lot easier by putting those trestles in first. So each one of these trestles meant that between Myra and Lorna, there was close to 25 bridges originally. As by 1958 or so, they were reduced down to less than 20 because of reconstruction of some of the bridges. Some of them were taken out altogether and replaced with steel.
Now, these photographs we're looking at here actually are taken from the 30s era, and you see the new steel trestles being put in next to the old wooden trestles. Look at the wooden trestle construction. How many stories high could some of these trestles be?
Oh, some of them could be 8 to 10 stories high. Certainly one of the biggest bridges in there was 780 feet long and 182 feet high. So you can imagine the millions of board feet of timber that has to go in here. Each timber has to be drawn up by the architect in the office. Then it has to be taken to the framing yard. And in the framing yard, the fellows have to put it together and be able to line up all the potential bolt holes. And not only that, they have to be able to figure out in their calculations the curvature of the track, its degree of inclination, and the banking. All of that, Mike, has to be able to be done by people who have no aid of a computer in those days. They're busy being very good math students when they were in grade 3, which I wasn't, to be able to figure out all of this sort of stuff. Because once they get the timber on site, they don't have the luxury of taking out a chainsaw or any other high-powered equipment to be able to fit. Those pieces all have to go in, these 14 by 14, 16 by 16, 12 by 12 timbers, to be able to put this thing all together. Each bent, lowered into place. And then, of course, the trick was in the 1930s and again in 1958 to 1962, a rebuild again of some of these bridges. So we're looking at, in some cases, third-generation bridges. There was two styles of rebuilding. There was the ones in which they built a steel bridge right beside the existing one, which didn't impede traffic. But in other cases, as we can see here, they actually have trains going over the bridges while construction is actually taking place. And so they had to be able to extract certain pieces of that wooden trestle to be able to lower the steel into place and line it up with the pre-poured concrete that is down in the canyon bottoms and still not impede east and west traffic going over the line.
I wonder whether the forests of British Columbia could even provide the timbers necessary to rebuild any of these trestles.
I suspect we could find some somewhere because we haven't burned down.
In the Carmana Valley or someplace which has been designed as a park.
Oh, certainly.
Or preserve.
You can imagine the length of some of these timbers too were absolutely spectacular.
Now, you've got this jigsaw puzzle, which is a trestle times 20 or 25 trestles, and you haven't laid any track yet. What an ingenious device this is. What do you call the track laying device?
It was called the Pioneer. And certainly you can't go very far across these gullies with your track laying until you get the bridges built. And so the track laying device is such that you have the engine in the middle of a string of flat cars. And behind the engine will be flat cars loaded with ties. And in front will be flat cars loaded with steel in 39-foot lengths on top of 40-foot long rail cars. Now, as at the very front of this is this device which is like a letter H with big flumes and down each side. Now there's a man on top of the flat car, and several men actually, and they would be putting cross ties in one side of the flume, which is forcing these ties forward, and then a whole gang of men will be at the front. They'll grab those, put them on the prepared ground, and another group has come along and dropped tie plates and spikes. And on the other side, another man is barring over the 39-foot sections of 65-pound steel, and it will be going up, and a gang will be grabbing those sections of rail and putting them down, spiking it. If they have got all of their marbles
Ducks,
lined up,
yeah.
ducks, marbles, all those things, my marbles are falling out of the bag right now, they will actually make about 7 miles a day on a good day on prepared ground.
This construction project, the Kettle Valley Rail Line, from 1911 to 1915, can we qualify it or quantify it at all as being a miracle?
Well, it is a miracle because it is really the last of the major railways in British Columbia that are built without the aid of any heavy mechanical equipment, with the exception of the Pioneer, and later on the big steam shovels that go into the gravel pits to be able to extricate the alluvial gravel, to be able to do the fills, and also to be able to spread the ballast on the rails to be able to hold everything in place once the trains start to operate.
Was there any cushy job on the railway?
Oh, the telegrapher's job.
And Mo Morrison is our guest in the next segment. Mo Morrison, a telegrapher on the Canadian Pacific Railway. Don't go away. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. We've swapped chairs. Randy's out. Mo Morrison is in. Mo is a telegrapher with the CPR from 1946 to 1985.
Yes, that's right.
That's a pretty good span. You were in the steam age, the diesel age.
You bet.
Yeah.
The best.
The best.
Right.
In 1973, you said, I'm going to take a ride aboard a snowplow into the Myra Canyon. Why did you think it was important for you to take that ride?
Well, I thought, Mike, at the time that the line might be abandoned. It didn't have a lengthy future. And I knew that that summer they were to be filming a segment for the National Dream up in Myra Canyon. So I was working in Penticton at the time, and this plow was going out in February. So I thought this is a great opportunity to take my movie camera, go up with them, and get some shots through the canyon along the way in the winter.
And you have shot hundreds of hours of film.
Well,
you are a lover of the railway.
You bet, yes.
The trip did not start well.
No, as we just got nicely underway, leaving Penticton, and finally when we got up to the Naramata Road crossing, the engineer said, "Oh, we're on the ground." And he says, "The plow is derailed." Well, I was riding in the engine, and I didn't even notice anything, but of course he, being experienced, could sense that something was wrong. And sure enough, the plow had gone off the tracks and derailed right there, and we blocked the crossing. So in a matter of, I'd say, 20 minutes or so, they just were able to put re-railers under the wheels. They had to shovel a lot of the snow out of the way. And they dragged the plow back on. It lifted up on the re-railers and plopped down onto the rails, and we were underway again, no problem.
Now, as we look at this film of the work of a snowplow on the Myra Canyon, I mean, in the summertime, those trestles are high enough and it's frightening enough, but in the wintertime, when everything's a little bit slippery, it's crazy.
It is. And you can see how deep the snow was up there. I was amazed myself at how deep, and it was a fresh new snowfall, clean and white, just beautiful. And there were ties that had been piled up there at the side of the bridges at each end that were stored there for use in future projects. And they were just buried in snow. And you could look way down to the bottom of these bridges. And what I did like especially, you could look across the whole canyon from one side to the other, and no matter where you looked, you would see trestles, and at the end, this huge curved steel trestle, which was absolutely amazing.
It was a wonder.
Yeah.
And really, what you have to think of is that down in the valley in February, it could be a beautiful, sunny, warm day.
Exactly.
But where you are, it's the depth of winter.
It was. And then on this particular trip, Mike, we went as far as, I think Westbridge. So the conductor got on the phone and called the dispatcher in Nelson to see whether we had to go all the way to Midway. And because we were now getting out of winter again, there was no snow over that way. He said, no, you can turn at a place called Del Y, which we did, and then worked our way back.
They call it the Del Y.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
where the train could back up and turn around.
So that's how we ended the trip that way. It made a long day, but most enjoyable.
Now, we called you having the cushiest job in the world.
Right.
Will you admit it, or did you say it was tough?
Well, I liked it all. It was tough learning the telegraphy. That was really a grind.
Yeah.
But once you mastered that, it was a cinch. And I thoroughly enjoyed it all, yeah. But I should tell you, Mike, I remember one year when I was riding on the passenger train from Castlegar to Vancouver, and I always looked forward to getting into the Myra Canyon because I was just fascinated by those trestles on the edge of these mountains and cliffs. And the conductor called me over because in one spot you could get a glimpse of Kelowna. And he said, look down there. I went over to his side of the car, and you could look way down, and there you could see piles of orange steel beams piled up to be meant to be building the new floating bridge across the lake at Kelowna.
Is that in 1956 about?
About that, I think it was 57. I'm not sure, but it was around that time. And that just amazed me.
Mo Morrison,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come in, for taking the time to shoot all this film, because what we want to do is get you back in here to tell us more stories of your recollections of the CPR. Thank you.
Well, I've enjoyed it all. Thank you, Mike.
Good work. Mo Morrison from Penticton, provider of much of the film that you've seen here. Thanks to Randy Manuel, who also provided us with much film as we contemplate the wonder that was building the Kettle Valley Line, and we wonder how it could be rebuilt at this stage. Thanks for being part of Pioneers in Places. See you again next time.